What's up, y'all? Want to welcome you back to the HuntStand Podcast, Season 2, and this is your host, Will Cooper. The HuntStand Podcast is your weekly source for insightful conversations with veteran hunters, dedicated outdoor enthusiasts, and top industry personnel. I'm going to have guests on here who are true experts in their field, diving into the captivating world of our industry and the great outdoors. With each episode, you, the listener, will receive invaluable knowledge, tips, and guidance on how to enhance your skills in the wild and in life. Tune in to be entertained, informed, and driven to reach new heights. The HuntStand Podcast is brought to you by Yamaha and its full line of class-defining, adventure-seeking motorcycles, ATVs, and side-by-side vehicles. The HuntStand Podcast is also brought to you by Springfield Armory and their lineup of Model 2020 Waypoint rifles. And finally, the HuntStand Podcast is brought to you by StealthCam. It's never been easier to go wireless with the Command Pro app. Capture high-quality photos and videos of all the action wherever you hunt with StealthCam's advanced cameras and data plans tailored to your needs. So make sure to check out their website today, stealthcam.com. HuntStand Podcast, Season 2, buckle up. It's going to be a good ride. Let's go.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, you ready to get this thing rolling, Paul?
I'm ready.
All right. Well, Paul, first and foremost, want to welcome you to the HuntStand Podcast. This is the first time we've had you on. We've done some master classes and stuff, but welcome to the podcast, man.
Thanks, Will. I appreciate being here, buddy.
Yeah, man. I'm excited to get you on here and kind of talk turkey hunting and talk your story a little bit. I know you and I met eons ago on a
long time ago.
Yeah, spring turkey hunt, long time ago in South Texas. So it's kind of funny how things come full circle and how small our industry is.
It really is. It's a tight-knit group. I mean, people, and a turkey hunter is pretty much the same no matter what part of the country you go in. They're passionate. They're focused on what they want to do. They love the calling and they love the camaraderie. And, turkey hunters are turkey hunters.
Oh, yeah. And we're definitely addicted to that. We lose a lot of sleep this time of year.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, one of the things I like to do to get each of these podcasts started is I have what I call a 30-foot tree stand view. It's kind of like that 30,000-foot view that I like for the guests to give the listener, just kind of that backstory on, who you are, where you're from, how you've gotten to where you are in life. So tell us about Paul Butski, man.
All right. Well, started back when I've hunted my whole life ever since I've been old enough to hunt back in the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
I'm old. Yeah, I'm old. So
29 years old, man.
Yeah, and older than that. I'm 69 years old.
Really?
Yeah.
I would not have guessed that, man.
I've been doing it a long time, been around a long time. I started, my dad really wasn't a hunter. He was a fisherman.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he did a little bit of hunting, but mainly my uncles and cousins did a lot of hunting back in the day. And I got started, with them actually since I was old enough to hunt. In New York State, there wasn't a spring season yet. I mean, there was a fall season. So I started off fall turkey hunting back in the late 60s, early 70s, and then I think it was 72 maybe was our first spring turkey season.
Okay.
So I've been doing it ever since it started, I guess you would say. Got involved with that. Did really, started a good friend of mine, Ernie Calandrelli. We started, he got me involved in a turkey calling competition back in, like 77, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And went to my first turkey calling contest in Oswego, New York, which is out in mid part of the state, in the southern part of the state.
Okay.
But people got a little misconception of New York. They think they think you're New York City. And it's really not that way. We've got some of the most beautiful hardwoods you'll ever see. And, where I live in the southern tier, the southern part of the state, from east to west across the whole state is nothing but, hardwoods, trout streams and stuff like that. Then you got your pocket of New York City that's down over here and, Western New York and that kind of stuff. But it's pretty wild for the most part, unless you're in the big cities. But, I did my first, and it was an amateur contest and I won it. And that got me hooked. I mean, I was hooked from there on. Became really good friends with Dick Kirby, who was he was really just getting started. Quaker Boy Game Calls.
Yeah.
And I was actually a machinist at the time, and we went on strike. I'll never forget this. Back in 77 or 78, we went on strike, and Dick was going to his first SHOT Show, and he needed some help. So I went and helped him. Me and my wife actually went, and one thing led to another, and I ended up never going back to work where I was at, and started working at Quaker Boy Game Calls, making turkey calls. I'd be in the basement making calls, and Dick Kirby was upstairs cutting hair. He was a barber.
Really?
So I was making the calls, and one thing led to another. And about 1980, 81, I won my first U.S. Open.
Okay.
And I developed a call back then. Being around all these calls, I was making all these calls, and pretty much all the turkey calls back then were like solid reeded, singles, doubles, triples.
Mm-hmm.
There was one called an Old Boss Hen that had a little split on the side. I started monkeying around with the call since I had access to it, like I did. And I notched out a reed in the back reed, and I added a fourth reed. So I made a 4-reed cutter style call. I called it because it cut really well, like a hen turkey. It really cut, and it was raspy. And pretty much nobody was really calling raspy back then. So in 1981, I went out there in Blaine, Pennsylvania, and called, and those old Pennsylvania boys were hardcore turkey hunters back then too. Robbie and Terry Rom, the Rom brothers, they're pretty popular. Dick Smith and those kind of people were really big. Dale Rom, they were really big in the turkey hunting too. And I scored really well when I cut. I did as a favorite call. I cut, and it kind of at that time kind of blew everybody away because it really sounded turkey.
Yeah.
So that really kicked it off then. I've won hundreds of turkey calling contests through the years, and pretty much, my claim to fame on some of the turkey calls were, I won the Levi Garrett All-American Open was a big deal back then.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Rogers-Lee, he's, synonymous in the turkey world. Ben was a great guy. He passed away. But after being with Quaker Boy for about 4 or 5 years, I went with Ben Lee for a couple of years. And then went back with Quaker Boy. And then in 1986, I went in business myself, Butski Game Calls. But the calling aspect of it never died. I mean, it was through the 80s, it was just nonstop. I won a Masters, Levi Garrett All-American Opens, 3 Grand National Championships, 6 U.S. Open Championships. And that pretty much near the end of the 80s and in the early 90s, I pretty much told myself, okay, I won my 6th U.S. Open, but I won the 5th. And the U.S. Open was a really big contest back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I won it the 5th year in a row. I says, if I win this, I want to go out on top. I'm going to kind of quit the competition end of it.
Yeah.
That's because all I could do is lose at that point. So I won it, and I pretty much got out of the calling aspect of it,
mm-hmm.
Competition out of it then. And it just turkey hunted my whole life. I pride myself on introducing people to the sport, young kids,
mm-hmm.
People that have never experienced it, women and stuff like that, or just outdoor people, celebrity people. I was fortunate enough. I called Roy Rogers in the only turkey ever killed back in the 90s.
Serious.
But I hunted a lot of celebrities, but that was like the coolest guy really that I had, and that was down in Texas.
Heck yeah.
So it was all cool, and to this day, I mean, I started hunting generally in March,
mm-hmm.
because I'm hunting either Florida. I guided the Southern Sportsman's Hunting Lodge in Alabama for, 35 years, which are great friends of mine, Jim Mason and Dave Lyons. They're like brothers to me, and they run the Southern Sportsman's Hunting Lodge. And I used to go down there and I'd guide the swamps. I loved hunting the swamps. And here I'm a New York boy, and I loved hunting these swamps in Alabama. So I really cut my teeth and learned a lot in those kind of scenarios. But I turkey hunt from beginning of March, and our season goes the month of May. So it's pretty much almost 3 months of turkey hunting.
Yeah,
traveling around the country.
Man, you can't complain about that. So you're pretty much a Tom Brady of turkey calling, huh?
Oh yeah. I don't have his money though.
Except the only difference is you went out on top, and he tried to go another year after winning a Super Bowl. It didn't work out too good.
Pretty much.
Well, there you go, man. Well, I know you kind of talked about it a minute ago when you first got into the turkey calling, but what kind of spurred you to get started with getting into the turkey calling contests?
my buddy Ernie Calandrelli, he went to a contest like 6 months before this one came up.
Yeah.
And me and Ernie grew up together. We went to junior high school together. We've always hunted and always used to share stories of duck hunting and different, deer hunting, which we did a lot of. And, I got into the calling end of it. And I mean, I turkey hunted. I had turkey hunted with but I was never really involved in competition calling.
Yeah.
Well, Ernie had gone to this turkey calling contest, like half a year or 3/4 of a year before I went to this one, and dragged me to that one. And that's what really kicked it off. I never looked back once I started, and I had won, and it was like, man, it became a passion after that. It really did.
Man, it's kind of funny. I've got a good friend that he's been a world elk calling champion, and it's he kind of has like that same thing where, he hunted elk, called, and he had a buddy that was like, dude, you're really good. You need to do this. And it's kind of like that same story that he had a buddy that got him into it, and like you, he just never turned back.
Yep.
Man,
and it became a career. I went in business myself in '86.
Yeah.
And then worked with Bob Walker, Walker's Game Ear, the original Game Ear. Me and Bob were good friends back in the late '80s. And I helped him out a lot and helped him at shows and stuff like that. And we kind of teamed up, my calls and his game ears. But then his game ears really took off. So I ended up working for him for a while. And then eventually GSM bought Walker's Game Ear.
Yeah.
GSM Outdoors. And I was actually part of the package when it was purchased back in, it's been about 16, 17 years ago now.
Man.
So I've been with GSM Outdoors for that long now. So great guys, great people, great friends. I mean, they're out of Texas.
Oh yeah.
And just great people.
They are. They're
family.
We got to have some meetings and stuff and meet everybody not long ago. So it was great to meet everybody. Would you have looking back when, I guess you could say, your career started, after the strike and you start working at Quaker. Looking back now, obviously hindsight's 2020, but back then, put yourselves back in younger Paul's shoes. Would you have ever thought that things would have gotten to where they are now?
Never. No. Never dreamed that, I always dreamed of it because I always loved to hunt. So I always dreamed of, at one point I thought maybe I'd be a game warden or just move to Alaska, as I'm talking as a teenage kid, something like that, because I love to hunt so much and I love the outdoors. But never did I think that it would get to the call-in end of it would get to give me the opportunities and open the doors that I've had throughout the years. I got to meet so many people and hunt in so many different states, and so many people that I've guided that, just were kind of at the top of their game in whatever field they were, whether they're a country western singer or whether they're a baseball player, a football player. So it opened the doors, and I got to meet so many different really popular people in the industry, even like I said, Roy Rogers. But there's been so many people that I've guided and hunted with, and it just, it's crazy. It's crazy how what it opened up.
It's pretty insane, what your passions can lead you to one day. You never know where they're going to lead you. In talking about all these people that you've guided and that you've gotten to hunt with, and then including your own hunting experiences, what would you kind of define as your most memorable turkey hunt out of all those?
Oh God, there's so many I could, that's the thing about the turkey hunt. I mean, I've been involved in so many hunts that were successful and a lot that weren't successful.
Yeah.
But so many hunts with different people and different celebrities or kids that really, meant a lot to me and that I guided. And just pick one particular hunt, it's just so hard because, I could, if somebody I haven't seen in 20 years that I guided on a hunt in Alabama or something like that mentions, yeah, remember Paul, I hunted with you, we went out, they could say it and it'll trigger that memory.
Yeah.
And I'll remember that specific hunt, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Because I've been involved in so many of them. But, guiding like Roy Rogers was really a thrill for me. Just taking kids out that were really close to me, my grandkids, taking them out turkey hunting. I mean, those are so memorable, and things that, just the memories. And a lot of times these hunts weren't successful, but, I tell people in turkey hunting, you don't have to kill a turkey every time you go in the woods. Some of the most memorable hunts I've had were, I've thrown a kitchen sink at, tried this, and hours later,
Yeah.
boom, that turkey spook and go the other direction. I mean, you
Yep.
still had a successful hunt as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can't honestly say one specific particular hunt that really sticks out in my mind, because every one of them is, you wish you had 30 people, sitting next to you to see what you just saw. But, it's just you and that bird, and you and that bird and that person that was with you. That's what makes it so memorable.
How many hunts, or not how many hunts, how many turkey kills, successful hunts would you say you've been on, including your own, over the years? Like, if you could put a number on it.
If I could put a number on it, I honestly couldn't say, for the simple fact I hunted multiple states probably for the last 40 years of turkey hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've hunted, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. And then I would hunt the Midwest. I would hunt Kansas and Nebraska and maybe South Dakota and places like that. Then end up in, kind of Texas and maybe Oklahoma in that particular area. And then the odd trips, you went out to Montana and different places like that. And then always ended up back in the Northeast and hunting New York and Pennsylvania, Vermont, Maine, different states like that. So I would probably have to go back and just multiply different states and and kind of do that in the amount of years. I've been doing it for 50 years.
Gosh.
So that's hard to put a number on stuff like that. It really is, as far as the actual kills. I was never into keeping track like that myself.
Like 300, 400, 500.
Oh, yeah. Easy. Oh, yeah.
God, 1,000?
Easy. Oh, yeah. I would say 1,000.
Ooh.
Yeah. Or more, definitely.
Wow.
Through the years. I mean, if you're talking 30 or 40 or 50 birds a year, maybe not 1,000. Maybe no. It's probably like 500 to 800 maybe birds.
Man, that's a lot of turkeys.
It's a lot of turkeys.
That's a lot of calling.
That's a lot of turkeys.
That's a lot of calling.
Yeah. But I'm not the threat to them.
I don't know, man. I don't know. I think you might be. Oh. So I kind of want to come back to the turkey competitions. How difficult would you say it is now to get into the competitive landscape of that?
Well, the best way to do that is you really have to go to like a grand, National Wild Turkey Federation Grand National Championship and see the caliber of callers that are out there. And, they're calling is a great calling right now.
Yeah.
I mean, Matt Van Sice is on top of the game, and, people like that. And, then they'll kind of give you a level of where you want to get to.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of take a temperature of where you are and in that realm. What do you sound as good as, or listen to some of the different tapes, or actually you can go online and watch the Grand Nationals. You don't have to actually go there. And then you can listen to the caliber of callers that are out there, and then you just it's practice. I mean, I used to, when I was at work, I'd always have a turkey call. When I was really getting involved in the competition end of it, always have a call in my mouth that drive people crazy, and but you got to mimic. And with turkey, the best turkey callers are the ones that you're not mimicking this person. You're trying to mimic that turkey.
Yeah.
Early on, a lot of guys would try to sound like this particular person. But when I was doing it, I would spend time in the woods and try to mimic the actual turkeys, not a person.
Yeah.
And because that's what kind of adds the personality to the call. It kind of puts the realistic tone and realistic little things that you do that makes the difference. And if someone's judging a turkey calling contest, they're listening for a sound, and they listen for, those maybe the little things that you throw in there that maybe, okay, this sounds real to me, and that's how I judge a contest. This sounds real. and you score that person that much higher because of it.
Man, it's interesting that you talk about that. Like, it's better, like, you listen to the turkeys themselves versus trying to replicate what a person's doing.
Right.
Because I have found myself doing that when I'm out turkey hunting, like, especially this morning when I was out in the woods. I was looking back on a specific hunt where I had a hen come in looking for us. I mean, she was within 4 or 5 yards of us. Like, I probably could have thrown a leaf at her. And I just remember the sounds that she was making and how she was yelping and how long and her cadence and
Yep.
what she was doing. And those are the things I look back on when I'm trying to call in a turkey, thinking about her, trying to sound like her to get him to come in.
That's exactly it. You hit the nail on the head, and you mimic that. But a lot of times, you forget it. So sometimes it's a repetitious of things. You
Yeah.
hear these turkeys, and like if I got hens near me,
Mm-hmm.
I can mimic a lot of the little sounds they have, and I wish I recorded a lot of it, and some of it I did through the years, but I recorded a lot of it where I was like, man, that's the best I ever sounded. I tell myself, you know what I mean? But then you go, a year or two goes by, another year goes by, and you kind of forget some of that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's good to always refresh your memory, because those little things that you do put in there, those little half yelps, little squeaks, any little thing like that just adds, just a little bit of realistic sound to it. And I think that works in the hunting aspect as well. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I've said this before, you don't have to be a champion turkey caller to be a good turkey hunter, but, woodsmanship is by far the number one most important factor. Putting yourself in the right spot and when to call, when not to call. These are little things that, you learn through experience. But putting those little sounds in there that, if you got a gobbler that's hung up out there 60, 70 yards, and you add that little bit of realistic tone, then that gobbler's out there and he's, all right, I got to go check that out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
absolutely.
it makes the difference.
Yeah, and it's like, I'll have to send you the clip from a bird we killed this past week, and I picked up a sound that these two toms did when they came in, and it was a purr, but I'd never heard a purr like this before, and I'm sure you have. And so I've got to send it to you because I'm like, man, I need to figure out how to replicate that because I cannot do it to save my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always been intrigued by the calling competitions and how those work. I mean, how you're talking about judging, and a judge is looking at and listening specifically on how that competitor is calling. I mean, kind of walk the listeners through, how a competition works. Is it? I think some people have a not necessarily misconception, but when they look at a calling contest, they think they just go out there and you guys are giving your best sequence. But we've talked before this that there's certain parts to the calling competition that all get put together into one. So
right.
Walk us through what a typical competition's like.
Well, competition is, they'll generally ask for like 5 different calls.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And generally you run 2 series of that call. Like if you did some yelps, and pause for a couple seconds and then do that repetition again.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're done with your call, the second sequence that you do, you give a nod to the MC, and then he'll ask for the next call. Now the judges themselves generally are faced the opposite direction or have a curtain, so they don't see who the caller is, because let's face it, that can get pretty political.
Oh, yeah.
If you got judges in there that their buddies, the caller and stuff like that, and then or if they're listening for a certain caller, you got to be careful of that. So a contest really is only as good as the judges are that are judging it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because you got your butt kicked and you ended up in last place doesn't mean you're the worst caller. And maybe that particular contest, there was judges in there that maybe knew some of the people, or you really don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But on a higher scale, when you get into like national calling championships, generally, they get some pretty judges, geographically from different parts of the country.
Yeah.
And guys they know that are really know turkey sounds, and get them to judge. And then, these guys aren't listening for one particular caller. They're listening for actual turkey sounds. So after they go through these whole sequences, generally there's a panel of judges, could be 7 judges or 5 judges, whatever it may be, and they'll throw out the high and the low score. So kind of then they add the other scores together. This way, if you were calling, I know it's you, Will, and I'm going to give you all 10s across the board because I know you and you're a friend.
Yeah.
But that eliminates that. You know what I'm saying? So
Mm-hmm.
it eliminates that by throwing out the high and the low score, or somebody that might not like you. I'm going to give them all these low scores. So that's what makes it a little more fair that way.
Have you gotten to be a judge yourself?
Oh, I was a judge a lot of times.
Do you still get asked to do that?
I don't mind judging, but it just depends. I mean, sometimes, if you get a bunch of callers, it gets old listening to some of the sounds. And some guys, that might sound too great, but then all of a sudden, man, you get a caller out there that sounds really good. I mean, generally that'll spike the scoring up there, and then you get some other people that, after that kind of drop off on the calling aspect. And sometimes the level of scoring stayed high until the next good guy that really comes up there. So it is subjective. That's why I say you can't get discouraged if you get your butt kicked in a contest, because, I've been in contests. I'm Levi Garrett All-American Open.
Mm-hmm.
I'll never forget. It was the most money they gave away at the time. It was in 1983, I think it was. I won $5,000 at a turkey calling contest. They give that much money away for first place. But the preliminary round, there was like 50 or 60 callers.
Yeah.
And they took the top 28, and I finished 28th on the first day. So I just made the cut. And the next day on the finals, I won. So it could be subjective. It could be, you just don't know. So you can't get discouraged because, like I said, I just made the cut the first day. And there's been times in the National Wild Turkey Federation, I might have finished 5th or 6th and then in the first round, and then come back and won the finals. But, that's it.
Kind of talking on the competitions, for, let's say we got a listener out there, or young guy or gal that, they love turkey hunting and they want to get into it, or, they are in it.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to that person that is trying to get better and they're out there competing? Like, what's your best piece of advice for that person?
Okay. The biggest thing is be comfortable with your calls.
Mm-hmm.
Be confident, be comfortable. Try not to, let's face it. I used to get nervous as heck when I go out there sometimes. You got a room full of, 1,000 people, 2,000 people in an audience and stuff like that. And you get out there and you don't want to make mistakes. You don't want to screw up. So practice your routines, practice it down to like, it like the back of your hand.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. Know it and be comfortable with it. And, try to block out the audience. Don't overcall.
Mm-hmm.
Don't ever end on a bad note. That's a big thing. A lot of times you might go through a series and you finish, throw one more series in there, and then quit. Don't do that. Don't end on a bad note. If you make a squeak, always cover it up or go a little bit beyond it, because that's the last thing they're going to remember is that last little squeak, that last little miss that you might have made.
Yeah, you could have
turkeys do miss, and turkeys do this kind of stuff, but they don't end on those bad notes usually. So
that's true. That is very true. Yeah, I've heard some funky gobbles and yelps before. I'm like, oh, what was that?
Yeah. They can fool you. There's no doubt about it. Turkeys, they'll fool you. You think you got some guy sneaking in, the worst caller in the world, and it'd be a turkey come walking up.
Oh yeah. So you've got that where, don't end on bad notes. And, obviously I feel like the biggest thing is just practice and repetition, right?
Repetition. And that is it. Repetition. Do your routine. Have your routine down to a science. Your series of clucks, your series of purrs, your series of yelps, your series of kikis, all those, and how you're to do those. Because a lot of times, if you overcall to it, if you hit it and do it twice and hit it good, man, do not try to do anymore. Because if a guy, sometimes they put time limits on these things, but if you're taking that time limit to the max, the judge is sitting there getting, all right, okay, that's enough. Okay, I'm giving you an 8, and they keep going, and the guy gets worse, and okay, now he's going to get a 6 now. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
just keep it, and always try to end on a higher note, and don't overcall to a judge, because they'll dock you most of the time.
When you're practicing, how do you know you sound good? Are you getting somebody to listen to you? You recording yourself? Like,
Both.
how do you know that?
Both. Mainly recording yourself is the thing, because a lot of times you don't, when you call, you really don't sound like that. Or you got to watch too with microphones and whatnot. You make sure you keep it at a distance, because a lot of times you think you sound really good, and you are, and yet on the recording it doesn't sound that good, because maybe it's distorted a little bit because you're too close to the microphone. Or so always do it at a little, record at a distance, because when you hear turkeys and you hear some callers, you hear the maybe huffing and getting the air, and and you wouldn't hear that at a little distance. So always do this at a little distance and record yourself. And then you've always had, like my friend Ernie Calandrelli, who we teamed up forever. We'd always listen to each other and critique each other and stuff like that. And Dick Kirby and whatnot. We could critique each other. This particular call sounds better in this call. This call sounds better in that call. And that all helps. And it's always good to have somebody like that with you if you're really getting serious about your turkey calling competition.
Yeah, those are all good, valid points, and I mean, I feel like there's definitely gonna be somebody listening that's getting into it that they're definitely gonna take a lot of that and not forget that. So since we're talking about calling, I want to get into calling a little bit, and I want to give people what they want. So because I know they're gonna want to hear you call here in a little bit on this podcast. But something I was looking up before we podcast today is this unique style of turkey calling that you've developed over the years, and we were talking about this right before we hopped on, but the Butski yelp. Kind of give the listeners a little taste of what that sounds like, and then kind of walk us through how you developed that over the years.
Well, the yelp like that is with a cutter style call. Okay, it's a cut reed. That back reed is notched out. It's got a cut out of it. I don't know if you can see it.
Yep.
Okay. And that gives it the raspy tone. And I use my jaw a lot more. Back in the day, people would, chuck, 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 and then I started, with that rasp, I would get the front and the back end. So I would elongate the yelp a little bit more of a chop, 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 and use your jaw a little more, just by your jaw dropping a little more. Now, I use my hands a lot out of habit. You don't have to do that, but it makes it sound a little more realistic to a gobbler. So, and in the judging aspect of it, it makes it sound a little bit more realistic too, because you're varying, the angle of your call kind of cups the sound a little bit, adds a little more body to the call, but it also, gives it a little more, makes it a little more direction variance instead of, facing from one spot, like you're moving a little bit.
Yeah, like a turkey.
Like the hen's moving a little bit.
Yeah, like a hen is moving around her head, looking around and calling at the same time.
Yeah. And how I do it this call, like I said, just more of a jaw action. See, I'm barking it out more chop, 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 chop. And you hear the raspiness at the end of the call instead of the clear note. It's got that. So you're barking the call out a little bit more, I guess you would say, and getting that raspy tone at the end of the call.
I kind of noticed, growing up learning turkey calling, like I always heard people talk about how whenever you're calling, it's like you're saying yawk or talk as you're calling. But listening to you, it almost kind of sounds like, listening through this right now, it almost sounds like you're kind of saying burp, 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 burp is what that call is saying to me. Is that what you're doing, or?
Well, my mind, it's more like a chop, 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 chop.
Okay.
In my mind, what I mean? Chop, chop, chop. And actually, my jaw is doing that. chop, chop, chop,
Mm-hmm.
chop. So it it varies a little bit with different guys. I mean, some people, their mouth is a little different.
Mm-hmm.
Your tongue pressure is a little different. And the tongue pressure, you definitely want to get that front end to it. So you're definitely giving it a little bit of tongue pressure to get that and dropping your tongue off it.
Yeah.
And
like
barking
that.
it out.
Okay. Now, with your mouth calls, I mean, obviously there's a plethora of boxes and slates that everybody uses. And I want to know for selfish reasons myself, but what would you say is kind of your go-to mouth call majority of the time?
What call do I make?
Yeah, the split read. Like what read or what mouth call are you using majority of the time? Like I know there's like your
That's our HS 2.5.
okay.
The only thing I add this fourth read to it to give it a little more body.
Okay.
But it's our 2.5 cutter style call.
Okay.
It's a cutter call.
And you had a hand in helping to develop that too?
Yes, that's a call I developed. Actually, the cutter style call I developed in 1980, and in fact, Earl Groves wrote a book, Talking Tomfoolery 2000, was a book that Earl Groves wrote. He was a great guy, old timer from Alabama, and he talks about first time he had ever talked to Ben Lee, and the first time they ever saw a cut read call was the call that I showed Ben.
Sweet.
That I developed, and you named it the cutter.
Okay.
And to this day, I mean, still that's my go-to call all the time. I mean, there's calls now that got a V cut or a ghost cut where that V is actually torn out, and they all sound raspy. They all got that raspy tone, and there again, that's up to the individual. So the guys into the calling contest, there's the cut that I have, and then also people make a slice off the side of that, and you need to try all these calls and see what works best in your individual mouth, in your particular mouth.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
And go from there. Some people, might like a cutter better. Some people might like a V cut better. It sounds better in their tone, or a ghost cut where it's torn out. That V's torn out, or that little slice on the side. But it's going to be a cut somewhere on that top reed, because that's what gives it the more realistic raspy tone.
Tell listeners again one more time what call that is that you like majority of the time.
HS 2.5.
I'm going to have to pick me up a couple of those. But yeah, like you said, I mean, heck, I could put it in my mouth and I might not be able to use it as well as what you do and switch to something different.
Yeah, most people started off with a solid reeded call back in the day. A single or a double or a triple reed solid. And that it gave a clear yelp. It'd be more like a yuck, 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 instead of a chop, and that the cut reed gives it that rasp, which to me, most turkeys you hear do have a raspy tone quality in their voice when they're really cranking out them yelps. And turkeys themselves, their voices change during the course of a call sometime. When they're calling soft, a little high squeaky sound, and then when they really get belting out those yelps, it just it gets raspy as heck. So, the variety of different calls that you do make the difference.
For the listeners out there, we've got a couple folks that, they're probably veteran turkey hunters. They've been doing this a long time, and we've got some newbies. So what would you say in your mind are probably, whether it's 3 or 4, what are the 3 to 4 key calls to know and master with a mouth call? Let's put box calls and slates aside, because I feel like a lot of people can get a hand on those pretty quick. But when it comes to the mouth call, what would you say those super important, crucial ones are to know and master?
A yelp, a cut, a cluck, and a purr. Those are probably the most 4 calls that you would really, and to master them on a mouth call is the purring sound by far is the hardest out of any of those, but which are easy to do on friction calls.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but on a mouth call, that's what I use. And the yelps have a different variance. You have
Mm-hmm.
regular old hen assembly yelps, or mating yelps, or tree yelps, little soft little tree calls, or little feeding yelps. So when turkeys are kind of flocked together and there's feeding along, you hear them yelp a little bit here and there, real soft, with some little purrs and stuff like that in there. And those are all different variants of the same call.
Yeah.
Just how much airflow and how much pressure you're putting on the call.
Give us a couple examples of each of those four.
Okay. Basic yelps, like I did. I always throw a few clucks in there in the middle of it and yelp, or kind of just break it off. Some basic yelps, some cuts, very sharp, aggressive cutting sound. And a cut is, well, it's just what it sounds like. It's a cut. It's not a yelp. It's not a cluck. It's a sharp, aggressive, very broken rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Real aggressive. Gobblers are very territorial, but people don't realize hens are also very territorial. Certain boss hens that run with that boss gobbler, certain hens that she's the dominant bird in that particular pecking order, established her pecking order. And this cutting sound is and when she really gets aggressive, she really can tear it up. And I don't care how good you are in a mouth call. I mean, you're going to run out of air, where she's not going to run out of air.
Oh, yeah.
So, but this is a cutting sound. So it's that sharp cuts that, and throwing a few yelps in there, and no rhythm to it. It's just a very broken rhythm.
What are each of these telling other turkeys? Or, what's that turkey saying? I mean, obviously, like with the yelp, what's the primary means of communication with each of these as well?
Yelp is probably the biggest one. When a turkey's yelping, she's letting other turkeys know she's there, or if she's by herself, she's looking for other, companionship, because they are a social, creature, the bird. I mean, they very seldom, they live alone.
Yeah.
So they do like the camaraderie. They do like the companionship. And for a yelp, when you're turkey hunting, a gobbler hears that, he knows there's a hen over there, so he's going to come check it out. And that cutting sound is a real aggressive, show of dominance. When you got 5, 6, 7, 8 hens in a bunch, you hear one of them start cutting. She's generally the most dominant bird of the bunch.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, if she hears cutting somewhere else, sometimes she's going to go and investigate and kind of show her butt a little bit. And, they do scuffle and carry on.
Yeah.
And, that whole flock of 4 or 5 hens and one gobbler going to head her way. And that old gobbler is just following that batch along, and you get a crack at them that way. So once you start cutting, it's pretty much a nonstop scenario, because if you were to quit, those hens kind of settle back down and just go back and doing her thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got to keep it up once you start it, because she'll get more aggressive and try to check it out. And then, she's going to come in to see what's going on. And then that's how you get a crack at them that way.
That's one of my favorite things to do is to piss another hen off.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about it. And sometimes that'll fire up the whole woods.
Oh, yeah.
If you're turkey hunting, everything's quiet. And next thing you know, you're cutting and carrying on. Next thing you know, you get a hen fired up. Next thing you know, you hear 2 or 3 different birds gobbling off in the distance. The whole world wakes up at that particular point.
Yes.
And it's a really aggressive call. And it's like there's been times I've been sitting there turkey hunting throughout the day, nothing happening. You've tried this and that, and then all of a sudden, okay, I'm going to tear it up for about 2 or 3 minutes. Just bah, 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 bah. Even get a box. Bah, 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 bah. Next thing you know, you hear a turkey gobble off in the distance. You hear another one gobble. You hear hens getting fired up. So it kind of wakens everything up and kicks like kicking something in the ribs and getting it moving.
Yes.
So
good.
Now another call that I do a lot, and I'm pretty familiar with what I love to do is the soft little stuff, the soft little yelps and purrs and clucks. And this is kind of a social thing where you got hens together, and, gobblers may be with her, or gobblers that are coming in, he hears that, so he feels that there's, it really settles him down, and it's a comfort zone for him to come into.
Yeah.
And these soft little purrs and yelps.
Yeah.
And that's a call that, I use a lot in close quarters.
Yeah.
Because turkeys that are hung up, and you might have thrown the kitchen sink and that didn't work, and that turkey's still out there. Give them that soft little seductive stuff, and hopefully that makes them close the deal, close the distance.
How do you purr? Because I have done a really good job at becoming effective at all the other ones, but purring, I can't do it to save my life. So for listeners out there that are in that same boat, how do you teach them?
And the best way to teach somebody how to purr is you got to be able to really roll your throat.
Yeah.
And just like you're gargling, and a lot of people do it. Some people can't, though. So you can roll your lips. People can roll their lips like that, and it works. But out of all the calls, purring is probably the most difficult call to master out of all on a diaphragm. Very easy to do on a slate call or glass call. But on a mouth call, it's probably the most difficult out of any call to make because of that. And what I do is I roll my throat, and then I just, kind of open my lip or close my lip, or increase and decrease the tongue pressure I do have on it. Put it in my mouth. So I'm opening my mouth, use my lips, kind of open and close my lips a little bit to change the pitch and change the tone.
Jeez. I've got to get that down one of these days. I've been trying, and I've kind of resorted to right now that somehow I've been able to, I don't know how I've done it, but you know how people can roll their R's, especially with like the Spanish language. Somehow I've been able to figure out how to still keep pressure on the reed and do that same thing. And it doesn't sound near as good as that, but it's worked occasionally for me, and it's okay, but I know it's not the greatest sounding thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And to be honest with you, that was my bread and butter call during the day in my turkey calling competition.
I bet.
A lot of people, could sound real similar in their yelps and their clucks and everything else. But, that sometimes that kind of set me apart, and why I did so well in competition was my ability to purr. A lot of guys, they sound just as good or better on so many different calls, maybe. But then when it came to purring, they couldn't do it.
That's what separated you from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, that's what separated me back in the day.
So the next thing I want to ask, back when you were doing your competitive calling, how were you able to balance the competitive side and still enjoying the hunting side? Like you're just eating, sleeping, breathing, turkey calling and turkeys. Like, how are you able to, I guess, not get burned out is the best way to put it?
Well, be honest with you, the competition calling was one thing, and the hunting was another, and it all led to the final, climatic part of the year would be the hunts. Yeah. Once the hunts started, competitions were generally throughout the year, building up to the hunting season.
Yeah.
And no matter where I went, no matter who the other competition callers and everything, it all boiled down to turkey hunting in general. It all boiled down to that. That's what it was all about. You became good at what you did in the calling aspect of it, but the best and final thing was, to be able to go turkey hunting.
Yes.
So that was like the coup de grace, I guess you would say, was the actual, once you got to hunting season.
Yeah.
And, and it kept you year round, it kept you focused on, your calling ability to when you did actually get out there and hunt. And then also made you good when you actually got out there and, got involved in competition. So it's just like the deer hunters. I mean, some people wish they could deer hunt year round. Where turkey calling, once the season goes out at the end of May, about 2 or 3 days later, it's kind of really a letdown. Okay, it's over till March again.
Yeah.
Where calling kept it going. Being involved in competition, calling it kept that atmosphere or that hype about turkey hunting throughout the year. In the off seasons.
And I'm sure your passion had a little something to do with it too, to keep you going throughout the year as well.
Oh yeah, it did.
Big time. Well, Paul, I know we're running out of time here. And so kind of give the listeners that last piece of advice, if you will, kind of on if they're looking at competitive turkey calling and just any last piece, general advice when it comes to turkey hunting, man.
Okay. The biggest thing, get out there in the woods and listen to turkeys. Listen to the actual sounds of wild turkeys. Try to do that as much as you possibly can. Take those sounds and try to mimic them as best you can. Mm-hmm. Try to mimic the sounds that turkey's making. And generally what happens is, I'll pick out, one particular hen maybe that I've always tried to mimic, until you get out there and there's another hen that, okay, she might have done something a little bit different. And then you try to mimic that.
Yeah.
And or combine the two things. But try to mimic the sounds of the wild turkey. Make sure you get yourself a routine, mm-hmm. and make sure you're confident and comfortable with the calls that you're using. That's the biggest thing, guys. They get to the point where, okay, this call is really, really hard to use. And unless you can master it, don't use that call.
Yeah.
Use something that you're a little bit more comfortable with. But always develop a routine. Mm-hmm. The sequences that you do, a couple series of yelps, the pauses in between, throwing a few clucks in there along what you do. You develop a routine. And I use that through whether I was in competition or whether I was turkey hunting itself. I always use the same kind of routine that I would do. And the more you do it, the more repetitious, the easier it becomes. And that's the biggest thing. Make it comfortable and easy until it's second nature. Because when the lights are on and you're looking out in the crowd and you see, 500 people or whatever, a lot of things change. Your mouth dries up like you could spit cotton. Yeah. You put a call in your mouth and you go to call, and it just so the more comfortable and confident that you could become, it eliminates those jitters. Mm-hmm. It really does.
Man, this is all great advice, especially for those that are looking to get into the calling like that. And then just even for all of us turkey hunters, man, I mean, like, this is all good stuff. And I mean, especially as a turkey hunter, I think that's really key. Like what you just said is listening to the birds. Don't listen to other hunters. Yeah. Don't listen to hunters. Don't listen to callers and let that be your sole focus of trying to repeat what they're saying. It's repeat what the birds are doing.
It's no better teacher than the actual wild turkey.
Heck
no
yeah.
better teacher out there.
That's
to teach you what you need to know.
1,000% true. Well, Paul, I know we're out of time here, so just want to thank you again for taking the time to hop on the podcast with us. If somebody wants to follow you on social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatnot, tell them real quick where they can find you.
Find me on. I've got a page. Paul Butski. Just look me up, Paul Butski, and I got actually 2 different pages, and you can find me there. You can find me through gsmoutdoors.com. You can find me, and on HuntStand.
Yeah, all the videos we've been doing, all the calling tips and everything, they've been great. People have been loving it, and I'll be sure to drop all your stuff down in the description below for the podcast. So, Paul, man, thanks again for taking the time to hop on the podcast with me today.
Well, I love being around you. I love the camaraderie. I love talking to you. So we just got to get out there in the field.
I was about to say, we're going to have to get out in the turkey woods, man.
No doubt, buddy.